What if ancient maps hold secrets that could shatter our understanding of history? Prepare to question everything. Welcome to the Purple Files. If you enjoy our videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. Let's get right into it. The Cantino Planisphere, also known as the Cantino World Map. Created in the pivotal year of 1502, this map is more than just a geographical representation. It's a snapshot of a world in rapid transformation, a testament to an age of discovery and a tantalizing piece of cartographic espionage. The planisphere is named after Alberto Cantino, an Italian diplomat who was, in reality, a clandestine agent for the Duke of Ferrara. His mission? To infiltrate the Portuguese court and acquire their most closely guarded secrets, their latest knowledge of global geography. Portugal, at the dawn of the 16th century, was at the forefront of maritime exploration, and their maps were state secrets, jealously protected. The Cantino Planisphere is believed to be a copy, or compiled from copies of the Piri Reis, the official and constantly updated master map of the Portuguese discoveries, kept under lock and key in Lisbon. Cantino somehow managed to acquire this priceless information and smuggle it out to Italy, an act of daring espionage that delivered a treasure trove of geographical intelligence to Portugal's rivals. So what makes this map so extraordinary and history rewriting? Firstly, its accuracy for the time is astonishing. It vividly depicts the coastlines of Africa, particularly the western and eastern shores, with a level of detail that reflects Vasco da Gama's recent voyages around the Cape of Good Hope and into the Indian Ocean. It shows the burgeoning Portuguese presence in India and even hints at lands further east. Secondly, and perhaps most significantly for our understanding of the New World, the Cantino Planisphere provides one of the earliest and most detailed European depictions of the eastern coast of South America, specifically Brazil. It clearly shows the landmass jutting out into the Atlantic, reflecting Pedro Álvares Cabral's official discovery of Brazil for Portugal in the year 1500. The map even includes the line of Tordesillas, the papal demarcation established in 1494, dividing the newly discovered lands outside Europe between Portugal and Spain. This shows the immediate geopolitical importance placed on these new territories. But here's where it gets particularly intriguing and begins to challenge conventional timelines. The map features a landmass to the northwest of Cuba that bears a striking resemblance to the Florida Peninsula. This is noteworthy because the official European discovery of Florida is credited to Juan Ponce de León in 1513, a full 11 years after the Cantino map was created. Does this suggest unrecorded Portuguese or other European voyages to this region before Ponce de León? Or were Portuguese cartographers privy to information from unknown sources, perhaps even indigenous accounts or earlier lost maps? The presence of this feature is a puzzle that historians still debate. Furthermore, the map shows a continuous coastline stretching north from the Caribbean, hinting at the eastern seaboard of North America, though it's depicted with less accuracy than Brazil. This again raises questions about the extent of exploration and the sources of information available to the cartographers. While not depicting lost continents, in the fantastical sense, the Cantino Planisphere rewrites history by revealing the astonishing speed at which geographical knowledge was being gathered and, through acts of espionage, disseminated. It underscores that the age of discovery was also an age of intense rivalry and information warfare, where maps were powerful tools of empire. The Cantino Planisphere doesn't show an ice-free Antarctica or mythical civilizations, but its mystery lies in its surprisingly accurate portrayal of newly discovered lands and its tantalizing hints of places supposedly yet to be officially explored by Europeans. It forces us to reconsider the neat timelines of discovery we're often taught and highlights the clandestine world of 16th century cartography, where a single map could indeed change the world, or at least how nations viewed their place within it. It's a secret blueprint, stolen in the night, that laid bare a rapidly expanding globe. Our next cartographic puzzle takes us to the year 1508 and the workshop of Franco Rosselli, a skilled Italian cartographer and engraver from Florence. Rosselli produced a number of influential maps, but one of his world maps from this period presents us with an intriguing early vision, a vast enigmatic landmass dominating the southern reaches of the globe, what we might interpret as a southern supercontinent. Rosselli's 1508 map, often created using elegant oval projections, was among the first printed maps to attempt a comprehensive view of the world, incorporating the very latest, albeit sometimes speculative, geographical information. It depicted the Americas as a distinct continental mass, separate from Asia, which was a significant conceptual leap for the time. But it's what lies further south on some of Rosselli's works, and on contemporary maps he likely influenced or drew from, that truly piques our interest in the context of rewriting history. In the space where we now know Antarctica lies, Rosselli's map, like several others from the early 16th century, depicts a substantial landmass. This wasn't a detailed, ice-free coastline like some later controversial maps, but rather a broad, often vaguely defined territory, sometimes labelled with variations of Terra Australis Nondum Cognita, the southern land not yet known, or even more tantalizingly, Terra Australis Ressa, Interventus sed Nondum Plene Exam, meaning southern land recently discovered but not yet fully examined. The very idea of a Terra Australis wasn't new. Ancient Greek philosophers and geographers like Ptolemy had theorized its existence, believing a large southern landmass was necessary to balance the known lands of the northern hemisphere. For centuries, this was largely a theoretical concept. However, by the early 1500s, as explorers pushed further south, these theories began to merge with perhaps fragmented reports from unrecorded voyages, sailors' tales, or simply a growing conviction that such a continent must exist and was on the verge of being properly encountered. What makes Rosselli's depiction, and others like it from this era, so compelling is this transition from pure theory to a more assertive cartographic statement. The phrase recently discovered is particularly provocative. Discovered by whom? When? The official documented discovery of Antarctica wouldn't happen for another 3 centuries, in the early 1800s. So, was Rosselli privy to information lost to us today? Were there voyages into the high southern latitudes that never made it into the official records, their findings only hinted at on maps like these? While it's probable that Rosselli's southern continent was still largely based on the classical need for geographical balance, the increasing boldness of its depiction and suggestive labels invites speculation. These maps show a world where the boundaries of the known were rapidly expanding, and cartographers were grappling with how to represent vast, unexplored regions. The inclusion of this southern supercontinent, even in a conceptual form, fueled the imagination of explorers for generations to come, inspiring them to seek out this mysterious land. The Franco-Rosselli map of 1508, therefore, doesn't rewrite history by showing a perfectly charted Antarctica. Instead, it challenges our understanding by highlighting how early and how insistently the notion of a massive southern landmass took hold in the European consciousness. It stands as a testament to an age teetering between ancient theory and emerging discovery, where cartographers like Rosselli were not just recording the known, but also giving form to the profound mysteries that still lay at the very edges of their world, daring to envision continents that, according to official records, were still centuries away from being found. Our 8th entry plunges us into a tale of Venetian noblemen, alleged 14th century voyages, and a map depicting lands in the North Atlantic that have baffled and intrigued scholars for centuries. The Zeno map. This controversial chart was first published in the year 1558 in Venice by a descendant of the Zeno family, Niccolo Zeno the Younger. He claimed it was based on a map and letters he had discovered in his family's archives, detailing the voyages of his ancestors, the brothers Niccolo and Antonio Zeno, supposedly undertaken around the year 1380. The Zeno map is famous, or perhaps infamous, for its depiction of a number of phantom islands and mysterious lands scattered across the North Atlantic. The most prominent of these is Frisland, a large island shown south of Iceland, complete with detailed coastlines, towns, and geographical features. No such island exists today, nor is there any geological evidence to suggest it was a landmass that recently sank. Yet, for over a century after the Zeno map's publication, Frisland appeared on many other European maps, its existence widely accepted. But Frisland is not the only enigma. The map also shows lands further to the west and southwest, including Estotaland and Drogeo. The accompanying narrative describes Estotaland as a civilized land, rich in resources, located somewhere on the North American continent. Drogeo, further south, is depicted as a land inhabited by cannibals. Then there's Icaria, another island supposedly ruled by a prince descended from Daedalus, and various other smaller unidentified. So, how does the Zeno map rewrite history? If the claims made by Niccolò Zeno the Younger are true, it means that Venetian explorers had detailed knowledge of, and possibly even visited, parts of the North American coastline more than a century before Christopher Columbus's voyages. The descriptions of Estotaland, with its European-like buildings and Latin-speaking inhabitants, are particularly tantalizing, suggesting potential earlier European contact or even settlements. The mystery deepens when considering the source of this information. Was it genuinely from 14th century voyages by the Zeno brothers? Or was Niccolò Zeno the Younger perpetrating a clever hoax, perhaps to bolster his family's prestige, or to claim Venetian priority in transatlantic exploration? Skeptics point to several inconsistencies and anachronisms. Some of the place names seem to be derived from more contemporary sources available in the mid-16th century. The depiction of Greenland, for instance, while present, is distorted, and some argue Frisland could be a misinterpretation or duplication of Iceland or the Faroe Islands, perhaps exaggerated by errors in copying or by imagination. Others suggest that the Zeno brothers might have indeed sailed in the North Atlantic, encountering indigenous peoples of North America, and their accounts became garbled or embellished over time, before being committed to the map published centuries later. The debate over the Zeno map's authenticity and meaning has raged for centuries. Is it a genuine record of forgotten voyages that predate Columbus, hinting at a more complex picture of European interaction with the New World? Or is it a masterful piece of Renaissance fabrication, a cartographic fiction that nevertheless influenced real-world exploration and map-making for generations? Regardless of its ultimate origin, the Zeno map forced cartographers and historians to confront the possibility of lost geographical knowledge and unrecorded voyages. The Phantom Islands it popularized, especially Frisland, haunted the maps of the North Atlantic for many years, a testament to its influence. It stands as a compelling puzzle, a cartographic ghost story that continues to challenge our understanding of who knew what and when about the lands beyond the horizon in the centuries leading up to the Age of Discovery. Few maps have ignited as much excitement, debate, and intense scholarly scrutiny as our seventh entry, the Vinland map. This seemingly unassuming piece of parchment, purportedly dating to around the year 1440, sent shockwaves through the historical world when it was unveiled in 1965. Why? Because it appeared to show, with astonishing clarity, a depiction of Vinland, a landmass to the west of Greenland, that strongly suggested Norse Viking exploration of North America centuries before Christopher Columbus. The Vinland map surfaced, bound with a medieval manuscript known as the Speculum Historiale. Its most striking feature is an island labelled Vinland Insula, located southwest of Greenland. The map also depicts Greenland itself with a surprisingly accurate, almost modern-looking coastline, and further east, Iceland and parts of Europe. The implications were staggering. If authentic, the Vinland map would be concrete cartographic proof, predating Columbus by half a century, that Europeans not only knew of the North American continent, but had mapped parts of it. This would lend powerful support to the accounts found in the Icelandic sagas, which describe Leif Erikson's voyages to a land called Vinland around the year 1000. Initial excitement was immense. Yale University, which acquired the map, published a scholarly volume supporting its authenticity. The map seemed to be the smoking gun that confirmed pre-Columbian Norse presence in the New World, a topic previously confined to saga interpretation and limited archaeological evidence, such as the Lanzu Meadows settlement in Newfoundland, which was excavated around the same time the map emerged. However, doubts and controversies soon began to swirl. The map's provenance, its history of ownership, was somewhat murky before its acquisition in the 1950s. More critically, scientific analyses of the map's ink began to raise serious questions. Macrone Associates, a firm specializing in chemical analysis, famously concluded in the 1970s that the ink contained anatase, a form of titanium dioxide, in a form and particle size that they argued was only available in pigments manufactured after the 1920s. This led many to believe the map was a sophisticated 20th century forgery. The debate did not end there. Over the following decades, further studies were conducted, with some researchers challenging Macrone's findings or proposing alternative explanations for the presence of titanium. Some argued that certain medieval inks could, under specific conditions, produce anatase. The map's defenders pointed to the accuracy of Greenland's depiction, arguing it was too precise for a forger without access to modern knowledge, while critics countered that even this could have been cleverly extrapolated, or that the forger might have had access to other, less well-known early charts. The Vinland map saga became a fascinating intersection of history, cartography, chemistry, and academic debate. If genuine, it radically rewrites the timeline of European awareness of the Americas. It would mean that knowledge of Vinland was not just confined to Norse oral traditions, but was also recorded cartographically in Europe well before Columbus's voyages, potentially influencing other explorers. It would solidify the Vikings' place as the first European discoverers and mappers of parts of the New World. If it's a forgery, it's an incredibly skillful one, created by someone with a deep knowledge of medieval cartography, paleography, and the Vinland sagas, designed to deceive even the most discerning experts. As of recent analyses, including studies in the early 2021s by Yale University itself, the consensus has strongly shifted back towards the map being a 20th century creation, with more advanced dating techniques confirming the modern origin of key ink components. However, the allure of the Vinland map and the questions it raised persist. To force a deeper examination of the Norse sagas, spurred archaeological research, and highlighted the profound impact that a single map can have on our understanding of history. Whether a genuine artifact or an elaborate fake, the Vinland map remains a powerful symbol of the quest to understand the true story of the exploration of the Americas. Our sixth entry is a monumental piece of cartography, a map so significant it's often dubbed America's birth certificate, the Waldseemüller map of 1507. Created by the German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller and scholar Matthias Ringmann, along with their humanist circle in St. Diedersvos, France, this large wall map, officially titled Universalis Cosmographia Secundum Ptolemaei Traditione et Americi Vespucci Aliorum Quae Lustrationes, a map of the world according to the tradition of Ptolemy and the voyages of Amerigo Vespucci and others, forever changed how the world viewed itself. Its most famous contribution, of course, is that it was the very first map to use the name America for the newly encountered lands of the Western Hemisphere. Waldseemüller and Ringmann, impressed by the accounts of the Florentine explorer Amerigo Vespucci, who, unlike Columbus, argued that the lands were a new continent, not just the eastern edge of Asia, decided to name the southern landmass in his honor. A small portrait of Vespucci even appears at the top of the map. But the naming of America is just one aspect of this map's revolutionary nature. Crucially, the Waldseemüller map was one of the very first to depict the Americas as a distinct continental landmass, separate from Asia, with a vast ocean lying between them, what we now know as the Pacific. This was a radical departure from many contemporary maps that still tried to connect the New World to Asia, and here lie the puzzles that lead this map to rewrite history. How did Waldseemüller and Ringmann, in the year 1507, possess the knowledge to depict this? Consider the timeline. Vasco Nunes de Balboa, the first European to officially reach or sight the Pacific Ocean from the New World, only did so in 1513. a full 6 years after this map was printed. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition, the first to circumnavigate the Earth and definitively prove the vastness of the Pacific and the separation of the Americas from Asia, wouldn't return to Europe until 1522. Yet Waldseemüller's map not only shows a distinct western coastline for South America, but also a wide ocean separating it from Asia. While the depiction of the western coast of North America is largely conjectural or absent, the southern continent is surprisingly well formed, albeit elongated and somewhat attenuated. How could they have known, or even reasonably guessed, these geographical realities so far in advance of documented European exploration? Waldseemüller himself stated that he had access to marine charts and maps beyond those of Ptolemy and Vespucci. What were these other sources? Did they include accounts from unrecorded Portuguese or other voyagers that had perhaps ventured further south along the coast of South America and glimpsed the Pacific? Or were there theoretical models, perhaps based on calculations of the Earth's circumference and the known extent of Asia, that led them to deduce the existence of this ocean and the continental nature of the Americas? The map even includes an inset globe that reinforces this revolutionary geography. The fact that 1,000 copies of this large wall map were printed suggests a confidence in their depiction and an intention to widely disseminate this new worldview. The Waldseemüller map of 1507 doesn't just give America its name. It presents a surprisingly advanced geographical understanding of the globe, particularly regarding the existence of the Pacific Ocean and the Americas as separate continents, years before these facts were officially discovered or confirmed by European explorers. It challenges the neat timeline of exploration by suggesting that some cartographers, through unknown sources or brilliant deduction, were piecing together a more accurate picture of the world much earlier than commonly believed. For centuries, only one copy of this remarkable map was known to have survived, rediscovered in a German castle in 1901. And in 2001, the Library of Congress acquired it for $10 million, recognizing its immense historical value. It remains a testament to a pivotal moment in cartographic history, holding within its lines the echoes of information whose origins are still not fully understood. In number 5, we examine a map created by one of the most influential figures in the history of cartography, Gerardus Mercator. His 1569 world map, titled Nova et Octa Orbis Terrae Descriptio ad usum navigantium emendate accommodata, meaning new and more complete representation of the terrestrial globe properly adapted for use in navigation, is legendary, primarily for introducing the Mercator projection. This innovative method of projecting the spherical Earth onto a flat surface became indispensable for navigation because it allowed mariners to plot courses as straight lines. But beyond its groundbreaking projection, Mercator's map holds another profound puzzle: its depiction of a massive southern continent, decades before Antarctica was officially discovered. Dominating the lower portion of Mercator's world map is an enormous landmass labeled Terra Australis Nondum Cognita, the southern land not yet known. This wasn't a new idea. As we've touched upon, the concept of a balancing southern continent dated back to antiquity. However, Mercator's portrayal was particularly bold and influential. His Terra Australis is vast, encircling the South Pole and extending far north in some areas, almost touching the tip of South America and reaching well into the Pacific and Indian Oceans. While much of its coastline is undefined or conjectural, Mercator included intriguing, albeit sparse, details. He inscribed phrases like Continentem Australum, Southern Continent, and noted capes and bays, some of which bear names that hint at possible sightings or theoretical assumptions. For instance, he includes a Promontorium Terrae Australis, Cape of the Southern Land, and suggests vast, unexplored interiors. A critical question is, on what basis did Mercator, in 1569, depict this continent with such prominence and apparent conviction? The official discovery of the Antarctic mainland wouldn't occur until the early 19th century, roughly 250 years after Mercator published his map. While sealers and whalers might have had earlier unconfirmed sightings of islands in the high southern latitudes, A continental landmass of this scale was not part of accepted geographical knowledge. This is where Mercator's map begins to rewrite history. Did he have access to information unknown to us today? Perhaps he was influenced by earlier maps, like those of Oronteus Phineas, whom we will discuss later, which also showed a southern land. Or was he drawing upon sailors' accounts of extreme southern voyages that hinted at land beyond the icy barriers? Some theories even suggest knowledge derived from lost ancient sources, though this is highly speculative. Mercator himself was a meticulous scholar who synthesized information from various sources. It's likely his Terra Australis was a combination of classical theory, reports from contemporary explorers who adventured south, like Ferdinand Magellan, whose voyage had passed through the Strait of Magellan at the tip of South America, suggesting land to the south, and perhaps a degree of educated guesswork to fill in the vast unknown. He even wrote on the map that the southern continent was certainly there, and that it was immense. Regardless of his exact sources, Mercator's depiction of Terra Australis was incredibly influential. Because of his map's widespread adoption for navigation, his vision of a massive southern continent became deeply entrenched in the minds of geographers and explorers for centuries. It fueled the desire to find and chart this mysterious land, directly inspiring voyages of exploration. While not an ice-free depiction in the way some other controversial maps claim, Mercator's 1569 map is a powerful example of how a cartographer's vision, based on a mixture of known facts, theories, and perhaps unknown intelligence, could shape the world's understanding of its own geography long before definitive proof was available. It challenges us to consider how much knowing in the age of exploration was a blend of observation, deduction, and the persistent power of ancient ideas. Our fourth entry is arguably one of the most contentious and widely debated maps to emerge in recent times, the so-called Zheng He, or Liugang 1418 map. This map burst into public consciousness in the early 2000s, specifically around 2001 and 2006, when it was presented by Chinese lawyer and collector Liu Gang. He claimed it was a copy made in 1763 of an original map dating all the way back to 1418. If authentic, its implications would be nothing short of revolutionary, completely rewriting the history of global exploration. What makes this map so explosive? It purports to show the world as charted by the legendary Chinese admiral Zheng He and his massive treasure fleets during the early Ming dynasty. Zheng He's historical voyages, which took place between 1405 and 1433, are well documented and were monumental achievements, reaching Southeast Asia, India, the Persian Gulf, and the east coast of Africa. However, this 1418 map goes vastly further. It depicts not only these regions, but also, with surprising detail, the outlines of both North and South America, Australia, and even a landmass identifiable as Antarctica. It suggests that Chinese fleets had circumnavigated the globe and charted these continents decades, even centuries before their accepted European discoveries. The map includes numerous annotations in Chinese, describing various lands and peoples. For example, it allegedly shows California as an island, a common misconception on some later European maps, but here attributed to early 15th century Chinese cartography. It implies that Zheng He's fleets possessed an almost global understanding of geography, far surpassing anything known in Europe at the time. If this map were genuine, it would mean that Chinese explorers, not Columbus, Vespucci, Magellan, or Cook, were the first to accurately map the world's major land masses. It would shift the entire narrative of the Age of Discovery eastward, highlighting an era of Chinese maritime supremacy on an unprecedented scale. This narrative has been popularized by authors like Gavin Menzies in his book 1421, The Year China Discovered the World, and this map is often cited in support of such theories. However, the overwhelming consensus among maritime historians, cartographic experts, and sinologists is that this map is not what it claims to be. The skepticism is widespread and based on several critical points. Firstly, its provenance is problematic. Liu Gang stated he acquired it from a Shanghai dealer in 2001, but its history before that is unclear. Secondly, numerous anachronisms have been identified. The depiction of certain geographical features and even some of the Chinese script and terminology used in the annotations appear to be inconsistent with early 15th century Chinese cartographic practices and knowledge. For example, some geographical concepts or place names seem to reflect European understanding or mapping styles from much later periods. Experts point out that known Chinese world maps from the Ming dynasty, while sophisticated, do not show this kind of global knowledge, particularly regarding the Americas or Antarctica. There is also a lack of corroborating archaeological or textual evidence from China itself. No ship logs, official records, or artifacts to support such extensive voyages to these distant continents by Zheng He's fleet. While Zheng He's expeditions were vast and impressive, their documented scope was primarily within the Indian Ocean basin. Many scholars believe the 1418/1763 map is likely a modern creation, perhaps from the 18th, 19th, or even 20th century, possibly incorporating elements from European maps and then backdating its claims. Others suggest it might be an 18th century Chinese map that creatively reinterprets older legends or attempts to synthesize Chinese and Western geographical knowledge of that later period, with the 1418 date being a later addition or misinterpretation. Despite the strong scholarly consensus against its authenticity as a pre-Columbian world chart by Zheng He, the map continues to fascinate the public. It taps into a powerful what-if narrative and challenges Eurocentric views of history. While it likely doesn't rewrite global exploration in the way its proponents claim, the controversy surrounding the Zheng He/Liu Gang map has undoubtedly brought more attention to the incredible and very real achievements of Chinese maritime exploration in the early 15th century. Our third most history rewriting map transports us to 18th century France and the work of Philippe Buache, a highly respected geographer to the French king. Buache, active in the mid-1700s, was known for his theoretical approach to cartography. One of his most famous and controversial maps, often cited with a date around 1737 or published in 1739, presents a truly astonishing image: Antarctica, seemingly devoid of its massive ice sheet. What makes Buache's depiction so startling is that it doesn't just show a vague southern landmass, as many earlier maps did. Instead, it portrays what appears to be the actual subglacial topography of Antarctica. Most strikingly, Buache's map often depicts Antarctica not as a single continent, but as two large islands separated by a clear navigable waterway running roughly where the transantarctic mountains and the underlying subglacial basins are now known to exist. It also shows rivers and mountain ranges on these ice-free landmasses. This is profoundly puzzling because the coastline of Antarctica wasn't even officially cited by explorers until the early 1800s, nearly a century after Buache's map. The continent's thick ice cap, which in places is miles deep, was only confirmed much later, and the true nature of the land hidden beneath that ice, its mountains, its basins, and the fact that parts of it are indeed below sea level, suggesting a potential archipelago if the ice were removed, was only revealed through seismic surveys and advanced technologies in the 20th century. So, how could Philippe Buache, in the 1730s, have produced a map that seems to show Antarctica as it might have looked millions of years ago, before it was encased in ice, or as it might look if all its ice melted? This is the core of its history rewriting potential. Proponents of ancient advanced civilizations or lost knowledge theories often point to Buache's map as prime evidence. They argue that Buache must have had access to incredibly ancient source maps, created by a seafaring culture that charted Antarctica when it was temperate and habitable. Buache himself was a proponent of what's called theoretical geography. He believed in underlying global systems, such as interconnected mountain ranges that continued beneath the oceans, and that continents were shaped by these grand patterns. He claimed his map of the southern polar regions was based on a combination of reports from explorers who had ventured into southern waters, like Bouvet de Lozier, who discovered Bouvet Island in 1739, believing it to be part of Terra Australis, existing charts, and his own deductions based on these theories. He hypothesized that the large icebergs seen by sailors must originate from massive freshwater rivers and, therefore, from a significant landmass. However, skeptics offer more conventional explanations. They point out that while there are some superficial resemblances, the accuracy of Boache's ice-free Antarctica is often overstated. His depiction is still highly generalized and doesn't perfectly match modern subglacial topography. The two islands' idea could have been a theoretical guess, perhaps based on reports of deep bays or indentations in the ice barrier, or simply an application of his symmetrical theories about continental formation. Boache was known for making bold, sometimes incorrect, theoretical leaps in his cartography. For instance, he also incorrectly hypothesized an inland sea in Australia. Furthermore, there's no concrete evidence that Boache possessed any ancient source maps. His work can be seen as an imaginative, theory-driven attempt to fill in the blanks on the world map, a common practice among cartographers of his era when dealing with unexplored regions. Despite these criticisms, the Philippe Boache map remains a captivating enigma. Its depiction of an ice-free Antarctica, with a channel dividing the continent, is visually compelling and continues to fuel speculation about forgotten chapters of Earth's history or lost ancient cartographers. Whether a product of brilliant intuition, fortunate guesswork based on nascent theories, or something more mysterious, Boache's map challenges us to consider the sources of geographical knowledge and the enduring allure of lands hidden beneath the ice. Our penultimate entry, at number 2, is a map that has become a cornerstone for theories of lost ancient civilizations and forgotten knowledge. The Oronteus-Phineus World Map of 1531. Oronteus, to use his French name, was a highly respected 16th century mathematician, astronomer, and cartographer. His 1531 quartiform, or heart-shaped, world map, titled Nova et Integra Universi Orbis Descriptio, is beautifully executed, but it's his depiction of the southern polar region that has ignited intense debate and speculation for decades. At the bottom of Phineus's map, surrounding the South Pole, is a vast landmass labelled Terra Australis, recenter inventa sed nondum pleni cognita, which translates to southern land recently discovered but not yet fully known. What is astonishing about this portrayal is not just its existence. The idea of a southern continent was, as we've seen, not new, but its apparent detail and, crucially, its seemingly ice-free state. Phineus's Terra Australis shows distinct coastlines complete with indentations that some have interpreted as fjords or river estuaries. It depicts mountain ranges in the interior and even flowing rivers. The overall shape, while not a perfect match, bears intriguing resemblances to the actual landmass of Antarctica beneath its immense ice sheet. A topography unknown until 20th century seismic surveys, this is the central puzzle. In 1531, Antarctica was officially undiscovered by Europeans for another 300 years. The concept of it being covered by a massive ice cap was even further from contemporary knowledge. So how could Oronteus-Phineus depict a continent in this region with such specific, apparently ice-free features? This map gained particular fame through the work of Professor Charles Hapgood in his book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, published in 1966. Hapgood proposed a sensational theory that Phineus, Mercator, whom we discussed, Piri Reis, our number 1, and other cartographers had access to copies of much older source maps. These source maps, Hapgood argued, were created by a sophisticated, as yet unknown ancient maritime civilization that possessed advanced knowledge of global geography and had charted the world, including Antarctica, during a period when its coasts were free of ice. This would imply either a civilization existing millions of years ago, before Antarctica became glaciated, or a more recent but still ancient period of significant deglaciation. The Phineas map, with its detailed rivers and coastlines for Terra Australis, became a key piece of evidence for Hapgood's thesis. He and his students attempted to reproject the map, suggesting that when certain distortions were accounted for, the resemblance to the subglacial Antarctic continent was even stronger, particularly in areas like the Ross Sea. However, mainstream cartographic historians and scientists view these claims with considerable skepticism. While acknowledging the intriguing nature of Phineas's depiction, they point to several counterarguments. Firstly, the accuracy of the map's Antarctic portrayal is often significantly overstated by proponents. When closely compared to modern maps of Antarctica's subglacial bedrock, there are substantial differences in shape, scale, and the placement of geographical features. Secondly, the depiction of rivers and mountains on unexplored lands was a common cartographic convention of the era. Cartographers often filled in blank spaces with plausible, if entirely conjectural, details to make their maps appear more complete and authoritative. The classical Greek theory of a large southern landmass, Terra Australis Incognita, required for global symmetry and balance, was still a powerful influence. Phineas may have been offering a more elaborate and geographically reasoned version of this theoretical continent. The phrase recenter inventor, recently discovered, is also open to interpretation. It could refer to the voyages of Ferdinand Magellan a decade earlier, 1519 to 1522, whose ships had sailed south of South America, proving the existence of land, Tierra del Fuego, and open sea further south, thus recently confirming the possibility of a southern continent without actually charting it in detail. Furthermore, Oronteus Phineas himself never claimed to have used ancient source maps for his depiction of Terra Australis beyond the general classical geographical ideas of his time. No physical evidence of these supposed ancient source maps has ever been found. Despite these criticisms, the Oronteus Phineas map of 1531 remains a potent symbol for those who believe in lost chapters of human history. It is visually striking and, at first glance, seems to offer compelling evidence of knowledge far ahead of its time. While most scholars attribute its Antarctic depiction to a combination of prevailing theories, artistic license, and perhaps some fortunate coincidences based on the era's understanding of geography, it continues to challenge our assumptions and fuel the enduring quest for humanity's forgotten past. Its influence on subsequent maps of Terra Australis, including Mercator's, is undeniable. And finally, at number 1, the map that arguably ignited the modern fascination with ancient cartographic mysteries and claims of lost global knowledge, the Piri Reis map of 1513. Created by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Haji Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri, known as Piri Reis, this map is not just a historical artifact, it's a legend drawn on gazelle skin parchment. Only a fragment of the original world map survives, but what remains has been the subject of intense study and wild speculation since its rediscovery in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, Turkey, in 1929. The surviving portion depicts the Atlantic Ocean with remarkable accuracy for its time, showing the western coasts of Europe and North Africa and the eastern coasts of Brazil. Piri Reis himself noted on the map that he compiled it from approximately 20 different source charts. Some of these were contemporary, including, he claimed, maps made by Christopher Columbus himself, which Piri Reis's uncle, a famous corsair, had reportedly captured. But most tantalizingly, he also mentioned using maps from the time of Alexander the Great, dating back to the 4th century BCE, and other ancient sources. The most controversial and history-rewriting aspect of the Piri Reis map is its depiction of a landmass extending southward from the tip of South America. Proponents, most famously Charles Hapgood, argued that this is not a distorted Patagonia, but an astonishingly accurate representation of the coastline of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica, specifically an Antarctica free of its ice cap. Hapgood and his followers suggested that the details shown, including supposed bays and river mouths, align with the subglacial topography of Antarctica, knowledge impossible to obtain in 1513 and only rediscovered using modern seismic survey technology in the 20th century. If this interpretation is correct, it would mean Piri Reis had access to source maps created by an unknown ancient civilization that possessed the ability to accurately chart the Antarctic continent when it was not covered by ice. This would, of course, completely overturn our understanding of ancient history and the capabilities of past cultures. Piri Reis's own claim of using ancient source maps is often cited as direct evidence supporting this theory. However, the vast majority of cartographic historians and scholars offer a more conventional, though still fascinating, explanation. They argue that the supposed Antarctic coastline is, in fact, a distorted rendering of the South American coast, particularly Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego. The coastline appears to be bent eastward to fit the confines of the parchment, a common practice when dealing with limited space or integrating information from different projections. The details interpreted as ice-free features could be stylistic embellishments or misinterpretations of coastal features of South America. While Piri Reis did claim to use ancient sources, these were likely Ptolemaic maps or other classical geographical texts from the Hellenistic period, which contained theoretical knowledge and general world views, not necessarily precise empirical charts of an ice-free Antarctica. The map, while impressive, also contains errors and inaccuracies consistent with early 16th century European and Arabic cartography. For example, it depicts a large mythical island in the Atlantic and shows Cuba incorrectly aligned. Despite the scholarly consensus leaning against the ice-free Antarctica theory, the Piri Reis map remains an incredibly valuable historical document. It demonstrates the advanced state of Ottoman cartography and the rich synthesis of geographical knowledge available in the Islamic world during the Age of Discovery, drawing from European, Arabic, and classical traditions. The Piri Reis map, with its enigmatic southern coastline and its creator's claims of ancient sources, continues to be the poster child for theories of lost civilizations and advanced ancient cartography. It forces us to question the limits of past knowledge and embodies the allure of discovering that our ancestors knew far more about the world than we traditionally give them credit for. Whether a window into a forgotten epoch of exploration or a masterpiece of early modern cartographic compilation, its power to ignite the imagination is undeniable. A journey through these 10 extraordinary maps reveals a persistent and tantalizing theme: the recurring suggestion of geographical knowledge seemingly far ahead of its officially documented time. From the shores of an ice-free Antarctica on the Orontius Phineas and Philippou Puach maps, to the pre-Columbian hints on the Cantino planisphere and Waldseemüller charts, and the ultimate enigma of the Piri Reis map, these cartographic puzzles challenge our conventional understanding of history. We've seen two main currents of interpretation. On one side, proponents like Charles Hapgood and his intellectual descendants argue that these anomalies are echoes of a lost chapter in human history, evidence of sophisticated ancient seafaring civilizations that charted the globe with astonishing accuracy, perhaps even during periods when Earth's climate and coastlines were vastly different. They see these maps as fragmented legacies, copied and recopied through millennia, their true origins shrouded in time. On the other side, mainstream historians, cartographers, and scientists offer more prosaic, though often equally complex explanations. They point to misinterpretations of landmasses, the common practice of theoretical geography in filling unknown spaces, the influence of ancient Greek ideas about symmetrical continents, fortunate coincidences, or the understandable exaggeration of fragmentary sailors' reports. They emphasize that while early cartographers were skilled, they also worked with limited data, often blending fact with conjecture and artistic license. The difficulty in definitively proving or disproving the more sensational claims often lies in the lack of unambiguous corroborating evidence, chiefly the absence of the purported original ancient source maps themselves. Without these primary documents, the debate often hinges on interpretation and reprojection, which can be subjective. Yet even if we set aside the theories of lost high-tech civilizations, these maps remain profoundly fascinating They reveal a dynamic and often surprisingly interconnected modern world where knowledge, and sometimes misinformation, traveled along trade routes and through clandestine channels. They showcase the intellectual daring of cartographers who sought to piece together a coherent picture of the globe from disparate and often contradictory sources, testaments to human curiosity, the drive to explore, and the ambition to define one's place in an ever-expanding world. The enduring mystery of these ancient and early modern cartographers lies not just in what they drew, but in how they knew what they knew, or what they thought they knew. These maps are more than just geographical records. They are cultural artifacts, windows into the cosmologies and intellectual frameworks of past societies. They remind us that history is not always a neat, linear progression, and that there may still be untold stories hidden within the faded lines and enigmatic coastlines of these ancient charts. The quest to understand them continues, recharting not only the maps themselves, but also our perception of the past, and the tantalizing possibility that our world was mapped and understood in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. And that is it. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the Purple Files, click the like button, and drop a comment down below. More videos to come, and until then, thanks for watching.